Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle Nierenberg, and I'm president of Food Tank, and I'd like to welcome you to Food Tank's webinar series. It's my sincere pleasure to introduce Dr. David Bergvinson, the Director General of the International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics. Dr. Bergvinson is a biochemist and an expert on integrated pest management and maize breeding. Before joining the center, he worked for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and ICRISAT has really been a great supporter of Food Tank's work over the last few years. He will be presenting today on digital agriculture, and we'll speak for about 30 minutes, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for questions and answers. This webinar will be recorded and available on foodtank.com. So thank you for joining us, David. We're so honored to have you. The floor is yours.
Great. Well, Daniel, thank you for having me. This is a very exciting topic, and I'm sure people will have a lot of questions about, well, what is digital agriculture? But I want to start the story from my early personal professional experiences at the International Crop Improvement Center for Maize and Wheat, called CIMMYT. And it was there that I engaged with smallholder farmers and really understanding what were their needs and what drove their decisions for their cultivation of different crops and different varieties of those crops. And I realized that economics is a key driver for the decision making as well as risk management. And the topic we're going to talk about today, digital agriculture, really helps farmers address both of those issues, increasing their profitability of their farm and managing risk. The photograph on the cover slide here is potato farmers that are connected to M-Farm. It's a program that started in Kenya, and through mobile enables farmers to access equitable markets. And so that's an underlying theme for our conversation today. So economics. The period of economic opportunity for smallholder farmers really looks somewhat like this, where we have over 500 million smallholder farmers who are really at the bottom of this economic opportunity pyramid, in large part because they lack relevant information and market intelligence to increase their profitability. As we go up that pyramid, we see that local aggregators are able to, because of asymmetry of information, negotiate a reduced price for farmers' produce, do some cleaning and storage, and then sell to regional aggregators, who in turn sell it to national aggregators, and then go into national warehouses. All the way along this chain, the value of the raw material is increasing until it reaches national or international processors and markets, which in the international market space is only in the hundreds. And so what we're really looking at here is mobile money or mobile technology really offering a platform for information symmetry that allows farmers to connect to equitable, higher value markets so that they get a higher unit price for their hard work. Now, this can be increased in value further through local storage so that farmers don't sell into saturated markets at the time of harvest, or they can do some light value addition to increase the value of their surplus production even more. So the context for digital agriculture is really looking at creating equitable opportunities for smallholder farmers to realize their full potential by leveraging the new digital technologies that we have available, not just in the developed world, but increasingly in the developing world. That includes cloud computing, social media, and big data analytics to support the agricultural value chain and make sure that farmers are integrated into that. So there are three big drivers that have helped me when I was working at the Gates Foundation and looking at opportunities for digital agriculture, and now at ICRISAT, really implementing these opportunities in service of our mission to improve the lives of smallholders in the semi-arid tropics. So first is to increase the adoption rate. That we really need to make sure that the technologies we're developing are farmer preferred. And so digital technology can actually scale up that feedback loop to support our research and making sure it's relevant. The second is reducing the development and delivery time for new technologies. And this has really been enabled through mobile technology that we'll talk about later. and cheaper, that we need to scale up these interventions at lower unit costs so that we can reach more people for the same dollars invested in development. So it's better, faster, cheaper products and services that increase smallholder productivity and profitability to reduce poverty, malnutrition, improve education, and improve savings of smallholder farmers. Now, what we really need to do is, as we develop these technologies, really think intentionally about human-centered design that engages women and children and youth in this process to make sure that they participate equitably into all of this modern agriculture that's supported by digital technology. The key underlying driver, though, is the democratization of information along the value chain that gives farmers the understanding of where economic opportunity lies and gives them the options and information needed to make good decisions. So, a definition for digital agriculture. This is a new term, so I would welcome the audience to help us sharpen this definition. But ICT and data ecosystems to support the development and delivery of timely, targeted information and services to make farming profitable and sustainable while delivering safe, nutritious, and affordable food for all. Now, a more technical definition of this is leveraging digital technologies like cloud computing, mobile phones, remote sensing, sensor or the Internet of Things, bioinformatics and systems biology, among others, to support demand-driven innovation and sustainable and equitable interventions for ecological intensification of modern food systems. I'm currently at the World Water Week, and the issue of water utilization and efficiency within the agriculture sector is really becoming a major issue, especially as we deal with climate change. So digital agriculture is an important platform or vehicle by which we can support sustainability and making sure that we address the sustainable development goals that I'll talk about at the end. So let's start with our smallholder farmer. We have Amsala here, and these drawings are courtesy of Sam Dryden, a colleague of mine, who's helped us with the visualization of the smallholder farmer, because it's hard to understand their context, the challenges they face, and the ways in which they traditionally manage risk and create opportunity for their families. So you'll see in Amsala's hand here, in her left hand, she has a mobile phone. Now that wasn't there 10 years ago, but it is there today. On the right hand is the traditional tool of a hoe to cultivate her land, and also, dual responsibilities of looking after the family and, of course, making decisions about how best to feed her family and create economic opportunity for her to purchase other important inputs or services like education and primary health care. So what has changed recently has been the use of the mobile phone for Amsala to access different information, as well as to access different services. So she can access, for example, where seed can be purchased that's relevant for her growing conditions. Recently, Nigeria has issued a program called eWallet, in which fertilizer subsidies are delivered through the mobile phone to people like Amsala, so that they can access inputs at a discounted rate. And that wasn't there 3 years ago. But what Amsala needs to manage her farm is really to have a deeper understanding of what are the health conditions of her soil, what will be the weather so that she can make timely decisions around when to plant, when to harvest. And also, what's important and increasingly becoming powerful is Amsala and smallholder farmers like her registering within a program, whether that be a service provider like M-Farm or a large national program like the Nigeria program called eWallet. More recently, India has taken on a very aggressive and ambitious project called Aadhaar, in which all citizens are given a unique 12-digit identifier that allows them to access government subsidies and services under different schemes. So this is increasingly becoming important, and we'll talk about one of the issues around personal identification and information later on, and the importance of maintaining the trust of farmers with use of these new technologies. But let's move on. So Amsala can also connect with other women through participatory videos, for example, shown on the left. which has proven to be a very powerful instrument for farmers to communicate best practice with other farmers. Digital Green has been an organization that's pioneered this area of learning for smallholder farmers. Started in India, and now they've taken it to Ethiopia and other countries within Africa. But farmers telling other farmers about best practices is extremely powerful and has proven to be a very efficient extension tool. But also, UMSALA needs to connect to co-ops, other farmers, so that they can aggregate their produce and get a better price for it, as well as to aggregate the purchase of their inputs like fertilizer. Now, UMSALA has largely been disconnected from the processing industry, the millers, for example. And this is where digital technology can bridge over that financial opportunity pyramid that allow it to connect directly to the mills, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that is really connected to her co-op, and this is where the emerging opportunity starts to be realized, that through farmer-producer organizations or co-op, farmers are aggregating their produce and then selling it into the processing industry, and thereby gaining a higher unit price because they understand what are the grades and standards needed to sell their produce into a fair and equitable market. Now comes the area that I'm leading within ICRISAT. We're looking at the utilization of digital technology to help us better utilize the wealth of genetic resources that we have in gene banks. Currently, our crop improvement programs to develop new varieties use less than 2% of the genetic diversity that is contained within the gene banks that store a wealth of collections from farmers' fields over time. And so we really need to use these big data analytics to help us better understand the diversity that exists within these gene banks, and then to utilize them to develop farmer-preferred local varieties that are distributed through a range of partners in the public and private sector. Now, what is the important thing here is you'll see the numbers appear here, and these numbers start to show up all the way through to the voucher that UMSALA has in her hand to access seed. That's to indicate that we can actually now track where genes of traits like heat tolerance and drought tolerance, salinity tolerance, traits that will be very important for us to deal with climate change, actually originate within the gene banks. We trace that and track those genes or versions of a gene into the development of new varieties, and we make sure that those varieties are delivered to farmers like UMSALA who need that specific suite of traits in order to manage the risk on her farm, as well as the market traits required for her to access high-value markets for her crop of sorghum or millet or chickpea or maize. And then comes the last key link in all of this, and that's the ability of farmers to integrate with the warehouse so that they actually can climb up that economic pyramid that we talked about earlier and realize the value of their production. And all of this is connected through a digital tracing system. Urban and rural consumers in time will be increasingly demanding about where their food comes from to make sure that it's produced in an ecologically sound manner and that it's been produced in a safe manner too, so that there's no pesticide residues, for example, in the produce that they're consuming. So traceability is going to become increasingly powerful, not just for consumers to have confidence about the food that they're eating, but also to unlock the economic opportunity all the way back to the smallholder farmer who produced that food. So where does all this digital technology then come together? We're calling it the digital rails that support that end-to-end integration that allows a farmer like UMSALA to be integrated through either agro-entrepreneurs or through government programs with the marketplace and to the ultimate consumer that allows her to unlock the economic opportunity of her farm. And so on the left-hand side, we see the different actors of that value chain: the farmer, the agro-entrepreneur, the large-scale buyer and store and processor, the individual consumer, of course, very powerful and influential in saying what society is demanding in the way of food, and the government, putting in place the regulatory environment to support all of this. On the right-hand side are the outcomes that we're looking at. We're looking at a farmer database that helps farmers manage their holdings and improve their productivity, and giving them updates in real time so that they can optimize their farm and manage risk. We're looking at creating data ecosystems that allow us to really integrate across the different sectors that we'll talk about in a minute, which is actually one of the powerful opportunities that digital technology offers us. Digital also allows us to integrate with financial instruments like mobile money. Mobile money has been proven to be very effective in Africa to leapfrog over the limited distribution of physical banks and allow farmers to do their banking with a mobile phone. And so all of these need to come together in order to create an environment that's to support smallholder farmers, but also it gives us a platform to support rapid cycle innovation and feedback loops so that we can understand better what are the real needs and aspirations of farmers, and making sure that we put in place the right science, infrastructure, and policies for them to realize those dreams. So this is a rather typical agriculture value chain where we look at very basic discovery on the left and all the way through to the end user on the right. Now what happens is that many of these links are siloed. They're not communicating with each other. Now that's improved a little bit with mobile phones and the internet and modern databases, but it still isn't connected to the full extent it should be in order to support the rapid cycle innovation we need to create a food secure world. What we need to support that is a cloud-enabled geospatial temporal data infrastructure that allows us to integrate different data layers like the soil, the rainfall, the distance to market, and the price of commodities to allow farmers to make appropriate, timely decisions. We also need to have an infrastructure in place that allows farmers to be identified so that they can be looked upon as individuals, and that the interventions that are delivered to them are delivered in a timely and targeted manner to address their needs and aspirations. Examples of these programs that are emerging are Aadhaar in the case of India, and I mentioned the e-wallet in Nigeria, as well as commercial providers like M-Farm in Kenya. And we also need an enabling environment, which is critical. Policymakers need to make sure that we have policies in place to unlock the power of big data while also preserving the integrity of individual or personal identification information. We also have entered into the new era of genomics. I'm sure many of our viewers are familiar with 23andMe, where people can actually sequence at least part of their own genome so that they understand, for example, some of the diseases that they may be predisposed to, or some of the special skills that they have based on their genetic makeup. Well, the same is true for crops. We can look into the genetic traits of crops using genomic technologies and big data analytics that help us identify new traits within the gene banks and utilize them to support and accelerate the development of robust, nutritious varieties for the future. All of this needs to be brought together so that we can provide the market intelligence and the feedback needed in order to prioritize our research, integrate that into the marketplace. And what we're really missing now is these verticals that cut across the value chain, such as financial service, e-commerce that integrates farmers into the marketplace, massive open online courses and advisory services that help farmers, extension agents, and researchers become educated in an increasingly efficient and cost-effective manner so that they understand how to best apply these new technologies to increase food security. And of course, a vehicle is required to coordinate along that value chain to realize the value for smallholder farmers. So these platforms, these digital platforms, can actually support demand-driven innovation that are based on rapid feedback loops from farmers, and they also can be used to create an ecosystem of services that are either offered through public or private sector providers, civil society, or farmers' organizations that work across those verticals and unlock their potential to support farmers ability to integrate into equitable markets in a timely manner, as well as other services. And this brings me to my last slide. In September of this year, we will be talking in New York about the 17 new Sustainable Development Goals. These will replace the 8 Millennium Development Goals that were launched in 2000 and come to completion in 2015, the end of this year. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals actually have a far greater emphasis on agriculture and sustainable food production than the first 8 Millennium Development Goals did. The goals that are particularly relevant to agriculture are poverty, number one, because 70% of poverty is in rural economies, and for most of those people, farming is the primary sector by which wealth is generated. The second is hunger. It's ironic that smallholder farmers are among those that face the greatest hunger. They're the ones producing the food, and yet because of climate change and variability in market prices and weather, are often the ones exposed to hunger. Quality education. We need a new generation of farmers. The age demographic of farmers everywhere in the world is alarmingly high. And so we need to create a new generation of farmers, and we can use massive open online courses and other instruments to help modernize and scale the way farmers learn, extension officers learn, and scientists learn about how to apply new technology to make sure we have a food secure world. Gender. Women play a major role in the agriculture sector, especially in the developing world. We need to make sure that as we design and deliver technologies, that women are engaged in that process from the beginning, and that they are empowered to utilize these new technologies to serve their aspirations for their family, especially around education and health and nutritional security. Clean water. Agriculture consumes 70% of the freshwater resources of the world. We need to make sure that agriculture is using that resource in a sustainable and responsible manner. Again, digital technology can help us make sure that we apply water when and where it's needed and optimize the utilization of that valuable renewable resource. Energy, clean energy, is going to be high on the agenda over the next 15 years. Agriculture is a key vehicle for that. Digital technology can support that endeavor through, for example, solar-powered pumping systems in which farmers can sell the surplus energy from those solar panels to sell back into the grid, creating economic opportunity for the farmer, as well as in providing the incentives to efficiently use scarce water resources. Goal 8, jobs. Agriculture is the engine for economic growth around the world. And we need to modernize the way agriculture is done so that youth come back into agriculture and see it not as a subsistence enterprise, but an enterprise that has economic promise, opportunity, and growth. 12, responsible consumption. Digital technology can make us increasingly aware about how we spend our money on food and looking at the environmental footprint of those decisions, as well as the nutritional outcomes based on our decisions of food choice. Digital technology can give visibility to those decisions and help us make better decisions, both for ourselves, for the planet, and for smallholder farmers. 13, protect the planet. We really have a responsibility to make sure we're good stewards of the natural resources. Agriculture plays a critical role in ecosystem services for land, water, air. We need to make sure that we keep track of those. And digital technology can give us the visibility to make sure that we're managing those resources in a responsible level at the farm, at the country level, at the continental level, and the global level. And life on land, making sure that we're protecting ecosystem services through agriculture, and again, using digital technology to give us visibility on how we're managing those resources and making sure that as we approach the ecological limits of the planet, that we manage within them so that we don't destroy opportunities for future generations to live off the land and produce nutritious food for all. So I invite you to please join us in improving the lives of smallholder farmers through demand-driven innovation, supported by digital agriculture. Thank you.
That was great, David. Thank you so much. What an interesting discussion. We have time for about 10 minutes of questions, so I'm just going to jump right in and share a question from one of our viewers. And they're asking, how can digital agriculture specifically be utilized to meet these 17 Sustainable Development Goals? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Great. Well, it's a critical question. So the Sustainable Development Goals will need to be driven by data. And where will that data come from? You know, when we set a goal, we have to measure our progress against achieving that goal. Digital agriculture can actually support us in that endeavor by collecting the information, as I described earlier, that gauges our utilization of natural resources, our consumption of food, and reducing waste, and also gives us visibility to the ecosystem services that agriculture provides and to the quality of those services, especially water quality, over time. As they say, what gets measured gets done. And for us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, we need to measure that. And digital technology is a low-cost architecture by which we can achieve those measurements and ultimately realize those goals.
Fantastic, thank you. Another viewer is interested in how specifically ICRISAT is working with both youth and women farmers, not just around digital technologies and agriculture, data and agriculture, but really what are you doing on the ground with both women and youth to help them be better farmers?
So with our engagement in India, for example, we're working with the Self-Employed Women's Association, or SEWA, S-E-W-A, which is a very large organization that brings together women that are self-employed and dealing with the challenges, especially in the agriculture sector, of improving their livelihoods. And so we've been working very closely with SEWA on several fronts around value addition of produce, on watershed management, so that they're managing their water resources that increases their profitability and productivity of their farms, as well as empowering them with the management skills to help women's associations govern more effectively and have a stronger voice in policy making. On the youth front, we're very engaged, of course, with the digital technology. As I mentioned, it's a very powerful vehicle for attracting youth back into agriculture, because youth have started to grow up with a mobile phone in their hand. But they want to have a lifestyle in which they're using their time and talents strategically and smartly. And so they look to the new era of digital technology, the mobile phone, to make informed decisions about how do they want to invest their time on the farm to maximize their profitability. What are the challenges that they need to manage around? And of course, how do they connect with other young farmers to share knowledge, opportunities, and create coalitions in order to realize the full potential of their farms? So in the area of youth, this is, like I said, an area that we really have to call to attention, because the age demographic of our farming community is very high. And so we need to work with a sense of urgency to address re-engaging youth back into agriculture. So we're starting in that endeavor right now, working closely with state governments, as well as including this as part of our country strategies for our work with national partners in different countries within Africa.
And are the governments and policymakers you're working with receptive to that, or are they reluctant?
No, they're very receptive. Akin Adesina is going to be taking over as president of the African Development Bank in September, and he's very keen on the youth agenda. He also full of mobile technology and digital agriculture to create economic opportunity for youth. So we have strong ambassadors in this area, and it's definitely going to be picking up, in an exponential way, I might add, over the coming years.
That's great news. Another viewer is interested, in addition to digital technologies, what are some of the most exciting innovations that you and your colleagues are seeing on the ground?
I think the most exciting innovation is around the social innovation of bringing diverse stakeholders together, aligning them to a shared vision and goal, and then working in concert towards achieving that. An example that we have is in the newly formed state of Andhra Pradesh in India, where the Chief Minister of the state, Chief Minister Naidu, has put together 7 primary sectors, one of which is agriculture. And in forming that primary sector, he's bringing together all line departments that touch on agriculture, finance, irrigation, inputs, markets, to work together with the public and private sectors and civil society to accelerate the pace of development and create economic opportunities for smallholder farmers. And sometimes it's in non-traditional ways. For example, moving farmers from a rain-fed system into a greenhouse-based production system where appropriate to generate high-value produce to sell into structured markets. So I think that social innovation is probably the most exciting area that we see emerging.
Another viewer wants to know, they're saying digital technology can cost a lot. How do those who are barely making ends meet get these sorts of resources?
So I've worked with women's groups in Tanzania, and you're right. For many parts of society, they don't have direct access to a mobile phone. But women's organizations, for example, in Tanzania, have come together and purchased one mobile phone amongst 10 or 12 women, and they build a corporate or cooperative in which there's a 6-digit PIN number to access the mobile money account. And they elect 3 members, each given the 2 digits of the PIN, so that if they want to move money as a cooperative, they need the 3 ladies coming together and sharing their different components of the PIN to access those resources on behalf of their association. So that's a very low-cost way. It's amortizing that cost instead of with one household across 12 households to gain access to this important portal for markets, financial services, and information.
That's very interesting. Our final question, because I want you to get back to World Water Week, is around resiliency to climate change. And can you talk a little bit more about ICRISAT's plans around highlighting the important role of agriculture in mitigating climate change in the lead up to COP21 in Paris?
Indeed. So there's 2 fronts here, the adaptation front and the mitigation front. Adaptation front, climate smart agriculture is going to increasingly be looking at our ability to support farmers in managing especially rainfall variability. This variability is going to be most acute in the semi-arid tropics of South Asia and Africa. And this is the mandate of ICRISAT, is the semi-arid tropics. And so we're putting a lot of effort into the development of heat and drought-tolerant varieties of sorghum, millets, groundnut, chickpea, and pigeon pea, all of which are climate smart in their ability to withstand fairly extreme conditions of temperature and low rainfall. They also offer nutritional benefits, and there's a nexus here between health and nutrition that I think increasingly we need to pay attention to. And the third area is around, when we talk about, COP21, is putting a price on water. Here, World Water Week, it's becoming increasingly important, this nexus between water, energy, and food security. And so we need to look at these challenges like climate change and positioning farmers to manage risk and variability of climate with these other sectors like energy and water to make sure that we're managing these issues in concert, creating a policy environment that supports that integration, and of course putting in place the incentives that incentivize responsible use all the way along the value chain, from consumers all the way back to our farmers who are producing that food. Consumers need to understand that there is a value or quantity of water for every food that we consume. It's approximately 16,000 liters to produce a kilo of beef, and it's under 500 liters to produce a kilo of a millet variety. So we need to be thinking about our consumption and its impact and ecological footprint on the planet. So all of us have a role to play, and it comes down to the decisions we make in the grocery store. So even if you're not a smallholder farmer yourself, the decisions you make in your purchase decisions do impact on agriculture. So don't underestimate the power of the consumer.
Absolutely. What a great note to end on. Thank you again so much, David, for presenting today. We're really honored to have you. Thank you to all of our viewers. The recording of the webinar and the PowerPoint will be available on foodtank.com. Thank you all again.
Great. And I look forward to any feedback. My email's there on the last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now.
Bye.